Hello and welcome back to the pod. Today's episode continues from my series on the inner world of an author. I was thinking that this is an interesting topic, talking about the inner world of an author, because a lot of my time is focused on my life's work. And if you are creative, you might be able to agree with me in the sense that your life's work can feel like you will be doing this work forever. So there's never really a set deadline on it or a rush because you need to set an environment to have that silent space to connect with the work in a creative world. But now, when you realize, well, you can create a process for that creative work that has a strict process more so than I'll do this in my lifetime someday. It might have a better success rate and also project deliverable timeline that is sooner rather than later. And today's topic is all about the woman that I am now. And before I started this recording, I thought, do I want to talk about this more? It feels so boring to have to go into this inner world for another few episodes. Or do I want to jump into the world as this some of my previous work that I did that's a little more like political and what was it? Some stage of the world in terms of the World Cup. That was some of my other writing. But anyway, so I said, you know what, let me just finish this series. Hope you're not too bored of hearing my inner world as an author in my life experience, but it also is something you can reflect on if you are also in a life stage where you're single, it's the summertime, you want a creative project or a voice yapping in your productive space that's in the background that you could tune into. And that's what I love about podcasts because I like to work and be productive in my work, but sometimes the work is a bit monotonous in detail-oriented editing and repetitive work that's important alongside the creative process. There is that repetition and editing and cleaning up and tidying that sometimes, to me, it feels more fun or enjoyable if I have a podcast on in the background or if I have some background noise or music or a movie. Some people prefer to work in silence, and some people prefer to work with a podcast. Now, everyone is different. It's up to you to find your own style of writing. If you want to get into a creative zone and learn how to sew and get into fashion, or you want to write and learn how to write in different writing styles that you might want to study, or if you want to get into music or sport, even have similar routines where there's set schedules and set ways to do things. Okay, so we're looking here at these beautiful images because I quite like putting these pictures together to give you a little visual of where my mind is at being in the tropics, what I like my creative spaces to look and feel like, and the vibe that is what summer means to me. Like when I think of the summer, this is what I feel is a clear depiction of the summer, whether there's moonlight to look at, breezy evenings and afternoons, whether you're by the ocean water or poolside. There's a specific feel of summer breeze and summer air that is clean and fresh. It is warmer, obviously, because the planet heats up more in the summertime, at least in certain parts of the world. And there's something wonderful about those golden sunset hours in the longer days by a body of water. So whether you are taking a vacation or you are heading to the beach this summer or to one of your favorite beachfront experiences, you might also be thinking about your inner world and whether you're sharing that inner world with your current community or partner or marriage or environment. This is what's going on in my world. So I'm recording this now because I feel to have this recorded at this time space period of my life before we get to go into more of the fun stuff like the world stage and Battle of the Cosmos, where I think that also will be coming soon and that will be fun. But this is a little more of a soft thought process. All right, so we get straight into it. I'm going to read from my phone again because I quite like how that came out as a different style of seasons change, and so does my recording style. And while I love these images, I'm going to just keep the full screen. All right, so we write. And it's about, somewhat about dating because when you work so much and you're not dating anyone, then there creates a lot of time to communicate about dating or to be intentional about what you want to have in your dating experience when eventually life does position you to be dating. And there's something unique and special about being so immersed in work, that's your life's work that you love doing, that does put relationships a little bit on the back burner because the thought of traveling feels a bit disruptive to the priorities and the workflow. And it does make you wonder and have a few questions. So I am recording these questions because maybe you were born in the 90s or 2000s or later on, that you will have to, at some point of time in your life, maybe have to ask yourself similar questions. All right, so the next time I meet someone, I think it would be lovely if it happened while I was traveling with my family. Because if I'm to meet somebody new and to create a brand new dating experience, then there's something deeply appealing to me about the possibility of meeting a brand new man while I'm already living the life that I have, that I've created for myself, traveling, spending time with people I love, taking care of my appearances and upkeep, enjoying the world. I have a unique taste on what I would like to experience in the world, what meals I would like to have, environments I would like to sit in with my dream man. And moving through that environment that feels naturally connected to the kind of life experience I fully wish to have. I don't really want to meet someone from a place of searching. I don't want to be in the middle of trying to figure myself out or trying to establish my value or trying to convince someone that the life I have created is worth something and worth understanding. I want to be met simply while I'm living. And there's an emotional difference between building a brand, doing your life's work, putting foundations down where you might not be able to recognize the value unless you actually value what I find valuable, or if you have no education to understand the value of health or wellness, then no matter what I am in an existence, you will not value it if health is not a value to you. And there's an emotional difference between being chosen after someone slowly discovers, oh, this person is valuable, and being recognized by someone who can see it without you having to explain it. And that's where I think sometimes I've come across a few people on my life's path where you kind of start over in a new life where nobody knows you. Nobody knows you, the family you're connected to. Nobody knows anything about you. You don't wear brand name. You're living under the radar because you want that raw experience of meeting people who have no idea anything about you, and you want to feel like you meet someone for the first time. No titles, no degrees, no life history, nothing. And there are quite a few people in the world who do this. And it's interesting. I wanted to have that life experience. But then, because you want to see, do I connect with this person on a human level, soul to soul? Do you see that I'm valuable without anything else? Do I find you valuable without anything else? I just find that interesting. Maybe that's a bit too much of a science experiment for a real relationship. But the point is, I do feel like I am ready to meet somebody that says, hey, I like you. I think what you do is valuable. I feel like you're valuable to my life. And the feeling is mutual. It's a two-way street and the energy flows naturally. For so much of my life in learning about dating, I feel like I say to people, I'm single until I'm married. I don't believe in having a boyfriend because when you're building a brand, this month actually is probably the 14th or 15th anniversary of Green Balance when I started in 2015. Okay, maybe 11. Probably 11. Started in 2014. There's 2026 now. We're 12. I'm turning 12. And you don't really want to just bring on a short-term boyfriend because this is my life's work. I decided I would be doing this since then. And a boyfriend to me is a waste of time because I want this to continue long term. And I want someone who wants to be in it long term. I also don't believe in divorce. I believe in once you're married, you're married. So you stick together and to me, success is the number of years you're married. So I'm already feeling behind because now I'm like, another year, another less year to say I've been happily, successfully married for these long numbers of years. So those things to me are boring now because now I'm like, well, getting married later on in life is just less years that you have to be married forever. But for much of my life, we have grown up celebrating anniversaries, marriages, babies, christenings, baptisms. And I have been becoming alongside that. So I was becoming financially capable. I somehow felt it would be great to learn financial responsibility and having financial power to be able to pay whatever I wanted online and make a easy financial life for myself. Playing with checkbooks and playing banking used to be some of my favorite things to do growing up. And I wanted my financial life to reflect not excess junk accumulation, but intentional curation. I was developing my work, my writing, my music, my brand, how to create a life that didn't depend on another person, to make it meaningful. And yet, strangely, financial independence did not necessarily bring me any emotional regulation that I thought it might. While I wanted to have financial independence, I also didn't want to be completely not dependent on a man. Maybe that got confused along the way. Like, if I was dating someone who wanted me to contribute financially to a home or to our life in those big things, I would find it difficult to consider that person husband material more so than a roommate. Because I wouldn't see the point of paying for my own phone bill or my own stuff and dating someone at the same time. And I discovered that being capable of providing for yourself doesn't mean that everybody will understand what that capability means or represents. And some people see a result without seeing the years behind it. They see a woman who's well-dressed, healthy, beautiful, independent, seemingly confident, but they do not necessarily see the discipline, the sacrifice, the late nights, the countless more than 10,000 hours of research, networking events, uncertainties, private work that created her. And there is something about that loneliness that you experience on that journey if someone does not understand or value the work that you value, which you learn to accept. You can become everything you work to become and still wonder whether anyone truly gets it and appreciates what it took to get there. Perhaps that is why I no longer want to enter into a love for the sake of falling in love and from a position of having to prove myself to anyone or prove my love. I do not want to spend the beginning of a relationship demonstrating that I'm worthy of being taken seriously and that options are required for dating participants to be communicating with several people to create some sort of value. I don't agree with that. I feel like you walk into something when you're ready to make a life stage commitment and you are met with the equal who also wants that and who is open to communicating on ways to merge a life together. I don't want to explain why I value what I value. I want to meet someone who can look at those things and understand that it's part of a whole woman standing in front of him. It's a balance that I've developed with wanting and curating spirituality and material world, not choosing spirituality to sacrifice my material or not being overly materialistic that I am an empty soul. And maybe my unique spiritual life development has positioned me in an interesting way that is not necessarily easy to identify or understand. That the spiritual path that I took, while it is the road less traveled, is when people like my father in his 70s would look to embark, or my mother in their 70s would look to embark on that part of life. And I did that in my 20s. So that decade that I did then, before building my financial career, has been positioned in that life stage as opposed to a later life stage. That does not mean that I expect a man to have lived my exact life. I do not need a carbon copy of myself. And I don't need someone who has made every decision I have made. What I do want is someone whose internal world makes sense alongside mine, that's equally nourishing and supportive and respectful. I want a man who understands independence and partnership are not opposites. However, interdependence is the word that we take two independent people to merge into one life while respecting each other's time and space to grow, but intentionally build a partnership together that is unbreakable by anybody, and that is a deep bond that stays committed to each other. Yeah, it's deep, but I feel like it's normal deep. I've learned how to provide for myself, but that does not mean I've stopped wanting to be loved. I've learned how to make money, but that doesn't mean I don't want a man who's financially capable. I feel like society has these strange ways to identify what is an independent woman and what is a woman who doesn't need a man. And it's so quick to categorize people. People who have traveled the world, people who have lived and gone to universities and have had experiences, who settle down later on in life, who choose to partner up instead of settle down. I've learned how to build a home within myself, but that does not mean that I no longer want to build a home with a man. In fact, I think becoming independent has made me more aware of what partnership actually means. They say you can meet somebody as deep or as much as you've met yourself. And they say when you find yourself, you find love, because that is what you attract and that is what you match with. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it does make you wonder of its accuracy in itself. I don't want a man because I cannot survive without one. I want a man because men are stronger than me. That's the point. Like it takes two to the life is made for two. And I want a man because I know further how much more capable two people are in life than just one. And when they choose each other freely, I feel like it's a beautiful thing to have. And that is very different kind of desire. I think in the past, I did sometimes confuse companionship with partnership. I could find that I enjoy a man, find him attractive, talk to him, travel with him, go on adventures, accept a meal, accept a drink, enjoy a drive, appreciate his company. They were men who were perfectly pleasant, lovely additions to a particular season of my life. But I am beginning to understand that the man who entertains me is not necessarily the man who can build a life with me. The man who can give me a ride is not necessarily the man who can carry responsibility or who wants to collaborate on routines, groceries. The man who can take me somewhere beautiful is not necessarily the man who can create a beautiful life. The man who desires me is not necessarily the man who is available and further compatible. That distinction has taken me a long time to understand. I also want to meet someone in an environment where the lifestyle I value does not need to be translated or studied or observed or picked apart for its flaws or overly critiqued or constantly tested. That is part of what makes the idea of traveling to somewhere close by, like Miami, or venturing out and meeting someone fresh. It's not that I believe every man from Miami or another city will be compatible with me, or that geography can change character. It is that I can imagine meeting someone there whose understanding of life might naturally overlap with mine. There's something familiar about the climate, the ocean, boats, a boating life, yacht club membership, country clubs, travel cultures, proximity to other places, the health, the fitness, the mixture of island sensibility with international ambition. It feels closer to the world I grew up in. And there's an understanding that there are many other places I could choose, but that a place like Miami feels pretty compatible for me. I can imagine traveling there with my family, being fully myself, perhaps meeting someone organically through the life I am already living, or connecting online. That possibility feels different from searching for a husband, being put in positions to be in a rotation to prove that I have options, that I've always had options, which I have no desire in proving. I never have had a desire in proving that I've had options. I find that bizarre. Perhaps I want to be encountered while I'm in motion. I'm building, I'm doing my thing, I'm working, I'm traveling, I'm laughing, I'm dressed, I'm dressed the way I design. I'm thin and fit, enjoying my family, exploring a city, enjoying dinner, going to the pool, a beach club, and living my life. But my parents are getting older, so these are all thoughts and tensions. Sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I hope I do get married before they pass because both of my grandparents have passed and I still didn't get married. But all in all, that's life. I want to meet someone because two people happen to recognize something in each other. Not because I'm looking for someone to rescue me, because I'm lonely and I need someone to fill a space, or because I need someone to validate my success. There's something deeply romantic about meeting someone and just enjoying each other and it just flowing into next steps without prolonged periods of waiting or procrastination or circles of looking at past baggage that waste time and energy. I like the possibility that my life could continue unfolding naturally, that my life and love can align, that there's one man who wants one wife, which is me, and I want one man, that same man as my husband, and that's it. It's final, it's mutual. I like the possibility that we could enter into a loving relationship that's committed without it requiring me to abandon everything I've built, but more so even be able to provide stability and structure for me to continue alongside his life that he's already built. And if it supports each other's, even better. I also think that I am more ready to be intentional about the kind of man I allow into my life. I don't want to repeat a pattern, become emotionally invested, spend years giving someone my time or energy, and later discovering we were never building toward the same future. I don't want to spend years negotiating basic compatibility, communication skills, respect. I don't want to explain why I want to travel, why I want to do things together, why I want to be monogamous, why I want to communicate, why I want to join in building a dream together, why I care about my hobbies, why I invest into health, why I want a certain standard of living. And I want to know these things early, sooner rather than later. I want him to know who I am. Saves everybody a lot of time beating around the bush. I feel like I would hate to have to get into a partnership with someone and then you meet who they are later on, and it's not the person you would have wanted to marry if you knew. I want it to be natural, like, hey, this is who I am, this is how I'm probably gonna be for the rest of my life. It'll upgrade, but it's kind of how it flows. This is you, this is me, cool. Not, I'm gonna trick you into marrying me or having babies and marry me, and then we're stuck together for life. That sounds awful. I would hate that, the latter. At the same time, I want to know who he is. I want to understand responsibility with him, understand his relationship with his family, money, his relationship with his finances. What is he responsible for? Where are his capabilities? What does he want to offer me? Does he want to offer me something that I don't already offer myself? Can he match me at my level and go beyond? What does he feel about health, traveling, commitment, marriage? I want to know that he is not prepared to be married and be stuck at home after he's already spent his finances traveling before I was there. That would suck. And there's only so much time and energy a human has in their life. I want to know whether he has the emotional maturity to be with a woman who's built her own life. I want to know whether he feels proud to stand behind a successful author, a brand owner, whether her independence quietly threatens his sense of masculinity or that it naturally feels safe and that it works next to his. I want a man who could look at what I've built and feel inspired and equally invested in taking care of it, rather than feel diminished or less than or comparing or that the light is too bright. And I want to be able to look at what he has built and feel the same. And perhaps this is the part I was missing before. I was so focused on whether a man wanted me that I wanted, that I didn't always stop to ask whether I genuinely was admiring the life he was creating. Being desired is flattering. Being understood is intimate. But being deeply respected by the person you love is something else entirely. And that's what I want. I want a relationship in which I could look at a man genuinely, respect the way he lives, the way he thinks, the way he handles responsibility, the way he treats people, and the life he has built. I want him to look at me and feel the same. And not because I'm perfect, not because I've accumulated enough wealth or status or money to make me look impressive, and not because I look a certain way or that his friends think, oh, she looks good now or looks good enough, but because he sees the person underneath all of it, and the person who had decided to become this woman today over 10 years ago, that this was always going to be the unfolding of my becoming without me having to prove myself. Rather, you have been removed from my existence, or you've been there the whole time. Sometimes you become the woman you worked hard to become, and you realize that the people around you have not necessarily evolved. And they might not evolve alongside you until they're in their later years because their 20s were spent being married and bringing family, kids into their life equation. Their focus is in a completely different place. And it's not to criticize or compare that's tradition in the 20s, but it's to acknowledge and accept with a form of grace. Would I have rather all of my friends were a little more single when I was single, that we all got to travel together and enjoy our friendship for a little longer before we all got married with kids? Of course. But maybe they all did that in their 20s while I was living an independent life, studying and becoming an author. So I missed a lot of things. And that's okay. I've accepted that. It's interesting to observe even further because I don't miss having kids right now or wanting to be married just to be married in my friendship group. I don't feel like that at all. I feel like I want my version of what it means to be in a marriage and to have my experiences with my man in a way that I have developed into my current tastes and how I want to spend my downtime. Whether it fits in with my friendship group or not, I feel like it'll flow, but it's not a priority for me. And you notice that through life stages, when women do get pregnant and have babies, a lot of friendships change and evolve over time because you are supporting yourself in each life stage. And I think that's what's the most important takeaway is that a life stage and acknowledging what life stage you're in, whether it's in its, and seeing who's in similar life stages is important to avoid the comparison trap. So you might not envy me in my life, and I definitely don't envy you in your life because I don't want those life experiences necessarily to that same way that you're comfortable with, and that's fine. And there's no argument that we have differences. It's just this is what makes you happy. This is what makes me content or happy. And life goes on. It doesn't feel like there's a need for hostility or comparison or judgment or negativity within the space. It's a simple acknowledgement of your life is going there, my life is going there. It's going in different directions. Unless we consciously made plans to line up our futures, life naturally takes people wherever it takes them. And maybe we never worked intentionally to line up our futures. So you can't expect that we will end up in the same timeline, life stage, like, you know, it's interesting. And I don't think it's about whether you should choose differently or not, or whether you make yourself easier to love or not. It's more, don't become smaller just to fit in a room because that feels temporary. Like dimming yourself down to fit into a room naturally feels temporary because it always feels like you could be doing something better with your time. And then you get to be discerning with, well, if I go to this beach house, right? And I want to go kayaking or boating, and you don't want to, and nobody there wants to. Everybody just wants to sit down and overeat. I will say that, and not be active. I'm not going to sit down and overeat to fit in. You best believe I'm on that kayak, whether I'm on that kayak by myself or with a man at my side. And it's no like judgment or harsh feelings. It's just I value exercise that much more than sitting around and overeating. And perhaps I don't need to lower my standards. Perhaps I do need to become better at identifying the people who genuinely have similar standards and who feel like what I say is normal to their existence. It's not out of the ordinary. And perhaps I don't need to convince someone to understand me because what does that prove? Okay, you understand me. I get paid to understand people for a living. Doesn't change anything. Doesn't give you information to change your behavior. Perhaps I need to stop choosing people who require so much explanation and don't even use that explanation productively. And perhaps the problem was never that I want too much. It's simply that I wanted something from uneligible providers. Perhaps I spent too much time looking at Ken dolls instead of vetting for husband material. And therefore, that is an interesting realization to make when you understand the difference of a provider man and a Ken model doll. And it does ask me to take responsibility without blaming myself. I cannot change the past. I cannot know which man might have become my husband if I took things more seriously and understood relationships differently when I was younger. I cannot know that. I cannot know whether I missed a great love because I was too distracted in being in research and sports and experimental and doing whatever I want and being not open to being told what to do and what not to do, especially without diamonds. It's not, I cannot know whether I was too complacent or too independent or too young to recognize what I was looking at. But I can choose how I choose to see things now. And perhaps that is enough. So when I imagine the future, I don't imagine myself sitting at home waiting for a man to find me. I imagine myself living. However, I do also imagine that meeting online on dating apps has brought together wonderful people. So it wouldn't be unheard of if I found somebody online that booked a flight to come and meet me and my family. I'm totally open to that. I do imagine traveling with my family, being in beautiful places, and continuing to build my career, growing my brand, designing, taking care of my body, wearing beautiful clothes because I genuinely enjoy it. Laughing with people, meeting new people, and remaining open to whatever life brings to me next. I do like having things to look forward to, and I find the challenge I come across is that when my head is down in my life's work, all I see are my life's work stuff. And it's not easy for me to make plans alongside that to understand the life's work in my tunnel vision and planning ahead for like the holidays. And we get a lot of holidays in Trinidad and Tobago. So I built my model of how I work since living in Barbados to work through most holidays. I barely take time off, but when I take time off, I take my days off when I want to take them off because I'm so tunneled into my life's work that it would be refreshing for me to have another brain to be like, I planned all of the holidays. This is how you flow in and out of your projects. Because clearly I can't do that part, and I'm not going to do that for a relationship when I don't feel like that's my strength to do that. I can provide ideas of stuff I like to do, but like logistics, I feel is a man's job. That's how I feel about that. And then somewhere inside that life, I imagine the possibility of meeting a man who's not intimidated by that. And it's like, I like doing that job. That's totally fine with me. And also like organizing routines and like cooking and cleaning and like help with staff and our employees and managing things like that. That's a lot of work. So finding that way of how we delegate things and being open to that conversation. Okay, let's figure out how to delegate together. No problem. You want to learn how to delegate and talk about delegating? Great, so do I. What's the point of not having a life where you're not delegating? In a partnership, of course. I mean, it's a lot to do on your own. And I do use ChatGPT like a personal assistant for a lot of things now, and I love it. I love my personal assistant tools because it works. However, I would still want an assistant to book my flights and organize all that other stuff. Those are not my strengths. So I'm not gonna pretend they are, especially if it's easy for you to do that. It just makes sense that you would do that, you know? And I do want a man who does not need me to prove that I'm successful because he can already see it. Who does not need for me to abandon my standards so that he feels comfortable. Who does not interpret my independence as rejection. I mean, I would never even consider myself independent. I mean, I don't know who would even put me in an independent category. I feel like I'm so interdependently engineered. I would never think that I'm independent at all. But if I'm being experienced by men that have said I'm independent or too independent, I find that interesting. And who understands that my desire for partnership is not a contradiction of my ability to stand alone. It's that naturally humans are built to be in pairs. That's just normal. I wouldn't even feel like I have to explain that to anyone. It's like, do you want to be alone and manage a two-person life? No. Who the heck wants that? The point of life is to have a partner to do everything with so you're not doing everything alone. But not just anyone. One that you actually enjoy being around. And it helps when a man does have his own foundation and is ready to build something larger with another person. But it also makes you wonder, like, if you're a man and you're watching this or listening to this, you want to build a life on your own. And a lot of the time, a man has a woman in mind of who they're building for. Whether they end up with that woman that they have in mind while they're inspired to build or not, doesn't mean that the woman they end up with is going to be put into that life. And then it doesn't even match the woman they choose. So I just find that interesting because you could get chosen by a guy who says, look at this beautiful life I built. You could just sit in my house and do your life's work and everything's provided for. The house might not match you at all because it was built for another woman. But by the time the man reaches that point in life where he's ready for someone, a woman like me who's not married shows up and then just gets plucked, put in a house. You would like to think it would be a lifestyle that matches you, that you build together for a reason. In this day and age, with every statistic you see with the amount of marriages and divorces and second marriages and third marriages, it's fascinating to see when you see these comments that it says, well, the woman who's by a man's side when he's building is not the woman he ends up marrying, and he ends up marrying just somebody new that just fits right in when he's a finished product or a finished version of a man. These are the things you see online, right? Of why humans are explaining the reason for marriage and divorce and remarrying and what's okay and what's not okay. I've never been married. I'm nobody's wife. Nobody is my husband. I don't have these kind of problems or concerns, but I do feel that when I am married, there is no divorce at all. That never is ever going to be a conversation. That's not an option. And that's why I believe in prenups, because I will be in an agreement that's written down on paper, legally binding, that says, once you're here, you are never leaving. And there's a rule book of how to treat people nicely and not be totally awful to the person you live with. And they're just negotiables and non-negotiables. To me, that just makes sense. That's just practical. Like, you're building a life together. You want to protect your legacy. You don't really want room for error. And you don't want anybody else being in the way of that successful future. You don't want any interruptions. And then there's a certain level of character development. People say, well, things take longer because you need more character development. Now, I find that insulting because to me, it's all a waste of time. To me, I find it hard to think that all of these slow seasons are not a totally waste of time. I will be doing this whether I'm in a relationship or not. I feel like I've built myself to be this person that I'm evolving into, whether I was in a relationship or not. So that's who I am when you meet me. So next, perhaps the relationship will begin at a distance and it will begin with a conversation, or perhaps it will begin in Miami at the gym one evening. Perhaps we meet totally stone cold sober in the gym, completely both single and disengaged, and hit it off. Perhaps we meet at a juice bar. Definitely won't be in a nightclub, I can assure you that. I will not be meeting my future husband in those kind of locations. And perhaps it will begin when I'm not thinking about romance at all. I do feel like during the summer, humans are naturally wired to like find each other in the summer. Like, I never envied the whole seeing people partying in the summer, hooking up, and then everything crashes by the time it's Christmas when you realize you can't be together. I never was into that whole summer fling thing because I realized that comes with too harsh of emotions and stuff that I'm not willing to play with. I don't like that. So, and you see this cycle. I've been single for a while, so I just watch. I just watch these timelines of life and people go by and repeat same patterns every year. And I find it interesting because I personally don't want to repeat any of my past cycles or patterns or emotional experiences. Like, I would rather sit alone and meditate for 4 hours than do that. Like, that's to tell you how much I find that unappealing to consider that as something worth it to me. Like, it's one thing to be attracted in the summer on your natural biology and meeting in the summer heat. Like, you would think from biology principles, men attracting women and meeting in the summertime is some sort of magic timing, but it might not necessarily be that. It could be in the winter, it could be in the spring, it could be in the fall. But there's something I feel scientific about the summer. I have no proof or science or research on this. I'm thinking off the top of my head through observation. But if so, then I really ought not to be indoors on a computer alone in the summer when I could be somewhere else meeting my husband. That's not into a summer fling, that actually is ready to commit. Now, if everybody has commitment issues, who's single right now, right? So now we're like the single people in the world, their biggest concerns, our biggest concerns, because I'm one of them, is usually stuff about the world changing, politics, spiritual stuff, religion stuff. The fears are more so societal changes, wars, stability, building wealth, these kind of focus points. And people in marriages are more concerned about pleasing their partners. And people in relationships tend to be very, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I researched this before, tend to be very focused on just the family, the partners. And yeah, you hear a little bit about the news and so forth, but you're not as consumed with it because you're so consumed with your partner. Therefore, when looking at how the world is evolving, it becomes apparent that you will evolve alongside the current state of events of the world without really being too focused on it. I could be wrong, could be a theory, but I feel like I read that somewhere. So it's worth investigating because I think it's interesting. And perhaps when I do meet my man, it will begin somewhere I cannot yet imagine. I just can't see it happening here anytime soon where I'm living in Trinidad for sure. Because I feel like I know everybody. It's 1.5 million people on an island. I would have known by now if there was a human existing on this island that I could see as a potential husband. And I'm not into being anybody's second wife or stealing anyone's husband or marrying a single dad. So with that put into the equation, that is to be observed. But I do know that there are single bachelors in the world who dream about having a Caribbean princess and an island girl. And it's just not for you if that's not what you're into, but it is somebody's dream. Just maybe not yours if it's not you. But if you are my future husband and you're watching this video, like, oh my God, definitely has to be you. That's exciting. Sometimes it's easy to just go straight on and filter out the waste of time sooner than later, especially if it has no real benefit to you. I do want the relationship that I end up marrying into to begin with recognition, where I recognize you, I think you're great, you're hot, you're doing your thing. I could see you as being a good match, and you feel the same way. I want to be seen as the woman I am now in 2026, not the woman I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last year, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. No, this is who I am now. I've unpacked all that baggage you keep wanting to send my way. That has been packed up and given away a very long time ago. And I do want to meet someone who says, I don't have all the answers. I'm not promising I can figure everything out, but I'm here for you and we'll figure it out together. And that to me makes a huge difference. Because either you want to figure stuff out together or you want to be a ghost and never communicate and disappear. And then I want to meet someone after all of this work and after this creative development. You know, each book that I write positions me in different rooms. Each piece of work that I publish changes my life, I've noticed. Each time, small little movements is very interesting. And whether I'm with a partner publishing or on my own publishing, it's interesting to observe how these changes unfold. And it might be similar for you as a man. I would love to hear if it is somewhat like you've realized these things with your achievements, every award you win, every trophy you get, every competition you win, or recognition you get with work. Like, how does that evolve you as a man? Does it change who you are or just evolve who you are? Because you wouldn't want to be with someone who gets even more successful with you. Like if you're my husband and I'm your wife, and you get more successful with me, obviously, and I do as well. We move together as a unit. You wouldn't want someone who's evolves into an awful person. Yeah, that'll be awful. So after all the personal transformations, and maybe the transformations continue as a parent, you be a healthy, fit parent, and a loving husband, and a supportive dad, and a caring man, and a hardworking man, a provider, focused. After all those moments, when I had to learn to provide myself for myself, it allows me to respect a man more because I did that for myself, that I understand how hard it is and what is required. So how I encourage myself, anything I can do for myself, I could do for my man, you know. That is fine. And I do respect somebody more when they are stepping into that provider, generous male role because I understand what it's like to provide for myself. So I'm a grateful person. I don't take things for granted. And I have learned that I do keep moving forward, even when nobody understands what I'm building or nobody else fully understands what I'm building. I want someone to meet me there, of course. Perhaps the greatest change is that I'm no longer waiting for a man to confirm, oh, you have arrived. You have crossed your finish line. I can be with you now after all the messy work you did by yourself. If it's someone I knew prior, And I'm not waiting for a man also to feel like, hey, I've arrived in your life. I'm here. I'm here to take things seriously, go to the next level. No, I'm not waiting for that. I simply want to meet someone who has arrived somewhere meaningful, and perhaps we can look at each other and recognize neither of us came into the relationship empty-handed. We both bring stuff to each other. We both have stuff we want the other person to experience. We want to have that dual partnership where I love surprising you and giving to you and taking care of you, and you love showing up for me and taking care of me. And it's exciting to have that mutual flow where it just flows. And we bring a life, a history, our own achievements, wounds that can be tended to, families, ambitions, and dreams. If we choose each other, it will not be because one person completed what the other person lacks. It will be because two people genuinely decide that life would be richer, deeper, better, more fulfilling, fun, adventurous, and meaningful together. That is the kind of relationship I want now. I don't want to rescue a convenience or an arrangement built around loneliness. Although I have really considered the logistics of an arranged marriage, given that I get to choose the man, like the idea of an arranged marriage to me sounded so good. Like my parents talk to your parents and then it's just arranged. I thought it was brilliant. You do a few FaceTime calls and then you get married. I thought I was like, an arranged marriage, if I could borrow that from that culture and apply it to my culture, I would. I would. To me, that's just so simple. Not to the expense of it being the wrong match or a lonely match or anything like that, but actually a good match. To me, that's cool. I don't want a relationship where I have to shrink to be loved. Although I don't mind becoming more refined. Don't get me wrong. I do love refining. And I do love being in, just lovely, polite life. I'd like that. I don't feel like that's shrinking, but I also don't feel like I have to be over the top or completely loud or obnoxious. Like I feel like I have my personal space in my gym where I kind of exercise or have my little free time. But in a relationship, I like being refined. I don't feel like that's being a doormat or a people pleaser. I feel like that's ladylike. I feel like that's, yeah, refined. I feel like that could be misinterpreted by a boy who is not emotionally able to have the capacity to have a mature relationship, might have that perspective, doormat, not understanding the value of what a relationship is or could be. So therefore, I want a partnership that feels like expansion. I want to look at the man beside me and feel I am grateful, not simply because he chose me, but because I finally understand what it means to choose someone whose life, character, perspective of life I genuinely respect. And I'm glad I know the difference. And I know the difference between attraction and admiration, lust and love, partnership and dependence, convenience and marriage, being wanted and being truly known, being chosen by someone you are attracted to, not just being chosen for being chosen's sake. Like there's actually a real connection. And between having someone around for the sake of having another body in the presence versus having someone who actually wants to and is capable of building a life with you, not for you, but with you. And perhaps that is why I like the idea of meeting someone with my family or having my family involved in that choosing process to get all that heavy work out the way. So then there's just space to be together. And I would not be meeting him as a woman waiting for my life to begin. I already have my life foundations. I built a very quiet life. I'm already living. I'm already becoming. I would be surrounded by people who know me, who trust me, who love me, admire me, care for me, rely on me where I can rely on them equally, not to anything excessively, carrying lessons from my past, and having ambitions for my future, but not at the cost of a healthy, successful marriage. I would not need him to save me from loneliness or provide evidence that my life has meaning or status. I would simply be open to the possibility that somewhere along the way, I might meet a man whose presence makes an already meaningful life and makes it feel from simplicity to even more extraordinary. Maybe that is the most beautiful place from which love can begin and unfold steadily, not from emptiness, but with consistency, from feeling full in self, in connection with Creator, not from wanting to run away together. Just kidding. But from discernment and not from needing someone to complete life, the life that you have. I thought the idea of running away together always seemed fun to me. I don't know why. Like if I ran away and got eloped, like to me, I love marriage so much and like I don't really care about weddings. Like I would have to feel like I'm gonna have a wedding because I'll have one now that I'll have one, but just the idea of marriage, doing all the legal stuff, that to me sounds so much more fun than everything else. But family's family, right? So weddings are just the norm. But from discernment and not needing someone to complete the life that I have, but from meeting someone whose presence makes me want to build a life that neither of us could have created alone. That's the best part. Because if you know you cannot create this life alone, and together you could create this life. Like, let's say you both have a shared view of this is what life looks like for me, like to feel successful or to go to that next stage. I can't do it alone. You can't do it alone, but we both want to get to that destination. That's cool. That makes sense to me. Yeah. So, in continuation from this very boring series of the inner world of an author, the very boring inner world of an author. Thanks for listening. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we have one more episode from this series, and then we get into some more interesting theories. Alrighty.